Okay, next up, when is charity not welcome? This is the story of Samaritans Purse in New York City. It is a case study in when charity indeed is not welcome, even when it's badly needed. New York State, as we know, is one part of the world that's been hit pretty hard with coronavirus. There was a point at which they believed it would be beyond catastrophic. They've pulled those predictions back, but it's still serious. I mean, it's very serious. They need help. And Mayor Bill de Blasio made it clear that New York was looking for all the help it could get and indeed needed it. But one organisation that responded to the call was Samaritans Purse, known to many for the shoebox appeal that goes out to third world countries for the kids at Christmas time. Now, the president and chairman of Samaritans Purse is evangelist Franklin Graham, son of Billy Graham. The mission statement of the organisation says that they're a non-profit Christian organisation providing emergency relief and development assistance to people around the world. We aim to demonstrate God's love and share the news of Jesus Christ by meeting the physical needs of victims of war, natural disaster, poverty and disease. And then the statement goes on to say that they provide aid and assistance to everybody, regardless of who they are and their identity or race or creed or gender, religion, ethnicity, etc. Samaritans Purse have been setting up, or they have set up a field hospital in Central Park in New York City in partnership with Mount Sinai Health System, which is a hospital in New York which is overwhelmed with patients. The field hospital has a 68-bed respiratory care unit, including 10 intensive care beds and 70 staff, including doctors and so forth. Samaritans Purse has done this, it's the fourth, I think, or the fifth field hospital that they've set up. They've been in Ecuador in 2016, the Bahamas in 2019, they're in Iraq in 2016, and they've also got one in Lombardy in Italy at the moment because of the coronavirus disaster there, which was really, really serious. But the field hospital in New York, as much as it was needed, as much as it's been put there to help, as much as it's providing care to everybody, it's been protested, it's been criticised, and it's been campaigned against by individual activists right up to politicians ever since it arrived. LGBT rights activists, including Reclaim Pride, the Revolting Lesbians, Rise and Resist, and an activist called the Reverend Billy, have all had a go at protests there on site. Slogans have included, "Get out of New York," "We don't want your racism here," "They are the virus," "Hate hospital," "Hate won't heal," "Do no harm," #Satan's Purse, #Health not hate. Now, what's the problem? Well, apart from outright opposition to Franklin Graham's evangelistic efforts, they resent the evangelism and say so, the faith position of the hospital, the statement of faith is a problem, and Christianity in general, a consistent theme amongst the activists is indeed that Samaritans Purse require their staff and volunteers to sign a statement of faith to work there and to do the work. And the statement of faith is more or less what you'd expect from a Christian organisation that's of a sort of an orthodox persuasion. I don't mean orthodox as in theologically standard conservative persuasion. It's just what you'd expect. It states that marriage is permanent, monogamous, and between a man and a woman. It states that Jesus Christ is the only way of salvation, and apart from him there is no eternal life, etc. The sort of thing you'd see in a church statement of belief. It's really that simple. But activists have deliberately tried to volunteer for the hospital whilst refusing to sign the statement of faith and then taken their grievances to the media as one avenue of attack. One activist said that he was unable to sign after he read this in the contract. "The primary mission of Samaritans Purse is to share the gospel of Jesus Christ, and we seek volunteers who have the same mindset. We ask that volunteers review our statement of faith and agree to support the ministry guidelines of Samaritans Purse." He read the statement of faith, which is in the terms I described, and he said that that somehow was a virulent statement of homophobia and transphobia, I quote. Media reports have described the statement of faith as an anti-gay pledge, agreeing that gay people will go to hell before being allowed to help and give health care. Obviously, the statement of faith doesn't actually say that, but anyway, that's the interpretation. Another activist said in the media, "We do not need evangelical proselytizing by a group that thinks hate is more important than saving lives." New York Senator Brad Hoylman said, "It's a shame that the federal government has left us unprepared for a pandemic, so we're forced to accept charity from bigots." He said elsewhere, "For decades, Franklin Graham has travelled throughout the country preaching a gospel of bigotry and hate. New York must require every doctor and volunteer working at Graham's Central Park Field Hospital to sign a statement affirming their commitment to following New York City's human rights law." Which is kind of weird because he's saying, well, we hate your statement of faith and we loathe the fact that you have one and want to sign it, so I'm going to make you sign mine, is kind of what's going on there. Now, despite having no desire whatsoever to discriminate in the provision of medical care, and despite that forming no part of Samaritans Purse beliefs, obviously, suggestions that they cannot be trusted are also being euphemistically pushed in the public discourse. Mayor Bill de Blasio said, "I said immediately to my team that we have to find out exactly what's happening. We're going to send people over from the mayor's office to monitor. I'm very concerned that this is done right." New York City Council Speaker, again, Corey Johnson, says Franklin Graham has a long history of spewing anti-LGBTQ hate speech. I find it troubling that he and his organisation are involved in our relief efforts, etc. I'll be monitoring this situation closely and making sure our city's values are being represented at all times. Senator Brad Hoylman again. Homophobic Pastor Franklin Graham and his field hospital operation in Central Park must guarantee all LGBTQ patients with COVID-19 are treated with dignity and respect. We'll be watching, as if they need to. I mean, it's innuendos, it's euphemisms, it's just trying to tar their reputation. And you know this, it's almost as if they, dare I say it, can't tolerate Christianity. It's almost as if they're so inclusive that they don't have space in their city for a Christian-run field hospital, even when they're saying they need every last resource they can find. Their characterization of the statement of faith is deliberately skewed. It says people need Christ in that statement of faith. So by their own logic, it's not anti-LGBT for saying that, it's anti-people, because all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. That's just basic Christian belief. There are many criticisms of Samaritans Purse. Commitment to evangelism is simply opposition to the most basic expression of Christianity that there is, which is the gospel. And their talk of hatred and bigotry is simply a trendy slur against people who, if they actually hated, you wouldn't follow Jesus, would you? Who said, if you hate, then you will be cast into hellfire. In fact, if you're angry, which is a low-level form of the same sin, he says you're in danger of hellfire, Matthew's Gospel, chapter 5. But let me make 2 points out of this. These are really important. First, on the subject of Christian organisations that have a statement of belief. The irony seems completely lost on politicians who rail against them when politicians themselves are members of political parties which operate on exactly the same basis. They have a policy platform and a political philosophy which they are bound to promote. If they, or indeed anyone working for them, was to promote the policy platform of an opposing party, or indeed was to step beyond certain boundaries on matters of political belief, then they would be sent packing. They operate on the same basis. They discriminate on the basis of belief and conviction every day. But what's good for the goose is not good for the gander. They are hypocrites. The assumption, see, is that normally, in matters where it's irrelevant, you don't discriminate against someone for their political belief, because it's usually irrelevant to most things. But when it comes to an organisation that exists to promote and champion political difference, that is, a particular political perspective, then obviously the assumption falls away. Obviously it doesn't apply. It wouldn't make any sense. It happens to be relevant in this case. It happens to be a relevant difference. The same is true for discrimination on the basis of religious belief, usually irrelevant, unless it's not, as with all heads of discrimination. If the organisation exists to promote and champion religious difference, that is, one particular faith, one particular religious belief, and so many do, same with politics, so many political groups, then the assumption obviously doesn't apply. The same is even true, you know, for LGBT rights groups. They should never have to employ an evangelical Christian who believes in man-woman marriage and binary gender. They too get to operate according to their beliefs internally. This is not thoughtful opposition to some form of injustice. This is blind intolerance towards one particular religious perspective in circumstances where it is not relevant, circumstances where emergency care is needed for the sick, and Samaritans Purse could supply help, could do so quickly, could do so effectively, and could do so for all, regardless of who they are. That's the first point. The second, much briefer point is this. Intolerance of the kind that I was just discussing, it's almost as if they're intolerant of Christianity, is something that we often find unusual. But I want to make the point that we shouldn't find it unusual because it's not unusual. Ask yourself simply this: what kind of world do we live in? The answer is that we live in a fallen world. We live in a world that was made good, but it has become, in many respects, hopelessly corrupt. And people are the same as being the primary things upon which the force of the fall has done its work. People are made good, but they are hopelessly corrupted. And we live with that contradiction, that tension all the time. There's something great about the world. There's something awful about the world. There's something fantastic and noble and wonderful about people. There's something terrible and flawed and debased about people. We live in that tension, and we experience, as we live in this life, the full expression of both of those things, sometimes in powerful ways. And we hit the highs and we hit the lows. And occasionally we get a glimpse of it in ourselves, which can be the most painful of all. A fallen world, a world like this, will therefore not simply praise good. It will not simply welcome good, but it will also hate it. It will also marginalize it. It will also reject it. That's why we live in this strange tension where good things never get the full place that they deserve. Neither do bad things get the full condemnation that they deserve. And that's why Jesus, who said the person who shines as light in the world and acts as the salt of the earth, will experience what? Firstly, reviling, evil speaking, even persecution, but they will also encounter people who see their good works and glorify God in heaven. That strange contradiction is there in the list of expectations we should have around the Christian life in Matthew chapter 5. So I guess the summary is this: get on with doing good, but manage your expectations. Hey guys, make sure you click like to like the video, or hit the subscribe button down here and click on the bell so you don't miss any notifications. And to watch more videos, just click here. Cheers. Go on, click one. You know you want to.